Dark Control, AI and Humanity's End by Michael J. McCarran. This is part 4 of this series of presentations on Dark Control. This is the more interesting part to me. It's on emergence. But before we get to emergence, we want to talk about some technical background about how things got to this point as far as technology goes. In my previous work, Battle Space of Mind, I talked about operations research a little bit and how reflexive control evolved out of Russian operations research. But it is the operations research is the application of scientific methods to management problems, emphasizing quantitative models, decision sciences, and applied cybernetics. Now, operations research was really pioneered out of World War II. And what they needed to do was to manage radar controllers during the war. And what came out of this was the study of controllers, the study of supply logistics, search and rescue, keying theory. Basically, what eventually comes to be like a lot of the things that we find in computer science is based out of operations research. A lot of the people who were involved in radar also became later involved in developing computers and other systems. Operations research is also related to the study of systems, system science or thinking. Some of the pioneers in this that we run into a lot are Ashby, Wiener, and von Neumann, and Stafford Beer. Now, Wiener is known for being the founder of cybernetics, or the study of control in machines and animals. I talked a lot about this in my previous work, Battle Space of Mind. How operations research shifts towards system science and thinking is that system science and systems thinking emerged from operations research when tactical problem solving was linked to holism, recursive modeling, and generalizable patterns. An emphasis on future processes, synergies, and scale blurred the boundary between science and social systems. So, operations research to artificial intelligence, they have this, they're all about optimizing things, optimizing controllers, optimizing learning systems, etc., etc. They're directly related. Cybernetics is that it involves feedback loops, which govern complex systems. And, control theory is optimal control guide dynamics, which involves information and robotics. And game theory, we have famous game theorists like Nash. Another interesting way to, Nash gave us the Nash equilibrium, which is used a lot in normative economics, but there's another way to have an equilibrium. It's known as a Kantian equilibrium, which is being worked on by a professor out of Harvard. Some of the other people who have been involved in my previous work, I spoke of Stafford Beer and his research, which is, a very similar system to agentic AI, in that it is a system that controls a system. Here's a quick video that goes over systems thinking, because this is going to be an important point to understand about understanding emergence. And not just emergence, but the problems that come from AI in emergence, which come from all systems that are based in complex adaptivity.
Systems thinking is very important to everything we do in the world. If you think about it, all of our important problems are in a systems environment, whether it's politics, climate change, the economy. Those things are all systems. And that's why thinking about things as systems is so important. Systems are an interesting problem, and they should occupy, I think, more of our intellectual activity. Systems provide for chaos. They're complex. What that means is, let's say I'm a policymaker and I'm going to do something to the tax rate on lobsters, okay? And you'd think, well, that has an effect on the lobster market. But it also has effects elsewhere. It affects the other kinds of food that people eat. And it affects employment, which affects the amount of money in the economy. So systems thinking is really thinking about all the ways that the real world is interactive to what we do. My name is Edward Castronova. I'm a professor of media at Indiana University. I study markets and systems in social media generally, but especially video games. At one point, my career was really in the tank. And so I gave up and I started playing video games. And then it occurred to me, kind of as a joke, what if I wrote like a serious economics paper about these video games that I'm playing? So I went ahead and wrote the paper, I start collecting numbers. And as I collected them, I was like, those are big numbers. What is going on here? This paper turned into something that was actually pretty serious. It just took off. Most economics papers, they just sit there. They get like 7 downloads in 20 years. This had like 20,000 in a year. There were a lot of people outside of econ who were interested in this. I'm talking about like government agencies, philosophers, and especially the news media. I started to get a ton of interviews. As we go through the world, we spend most of our time actually interacting with systems. As a game economist, I realized early that's what game economies are. And so that early paper was mostly about quantifying it. For example, if you pump a bunch of money into a video game economy, inflation happens, just like it does in the real world. So by the same logic that economies in video games really teach us about systems in the real world, machinations now allows us to look at systems. So if you think of a system as a series of parts moving in loops, well, the machinations tool lets you make a blueprint of that. You could, for example, create one pool that says carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and another pool that says Amazon rainforest, and another pool that says Chinese CO2 production, and another one that says US CO2 production, and have all the arrows that you need moving things around, as well as something that counts how much CO2 do we have to get to in order to survive what's coming. As soon as I realized what machinations was, I got all these ideas for what you could do with it, and I ended up making a simulation of all of the economies in Europe before World War I, and how during World War I, they had each one of them to manage things like how many people do we have, how many women should we put in factories, what is the effect of the submarine warfare. This was a simulation of World War I that had nothing to do with the actual battlefield, but everything about the interactive systems of European commerce and production. When you're looking at something complicated, you can't get your mind around it. And you know if you press this button, something's going to happen, but you have no idea what. And what you need is a bird's eye overview of all the parts and how they interact with one another. And that's what this tool provides. When I teach using machinations, what I like to do is start with just a simple game economy. And of course I tell them, this isn't just a game economy, this is a simple real-world economy as well. Our economy works basically the same way. I show them how an influx of currency causes inflation. Once you use the tool, you can understand the effects of things in a way that you can't if you just don't have an overview of the system. You imagine a young person growing up thinking that the world is a simple input-output mechanism. I do something and I get a result. And it turns out the world isn't going to look like that to them. It's pretty clear that the future is going to be systems-driven. As AI comes in, it's going to be interacting with itself and interacting with us. The interaction of different parts of the world is only going to increase as technology increases. So my advice to a young person is to do everything they can to understand why it is that if they do this one thing over here, it turns into this strange feedback over there. So if nothing else, if you can think about the world in terms of systems and not simple input-output interactions, you'll be able to say to yourself, it's very strange what's happening now, but everything around me that seems so confusing is actually part of an interactive system that has some logic to it.
So we can see that, what we're talking about is in a complex system here with more than one, say, node in a network. Anything that has more than one is going to have some complexity to it. And to understand this complexity is to understand it from a systems level perspective, to see all those parts moving like the professor was saying in this video, and understanding what the consequences of those parts moving together, which are going to form emergent behaviors, which we'll be getting to. But it's important to understand how systems have been influencing and affecting American society since the end of World War II. We have to understand that in World War II was a major technological revolution. That not only did they give us the atomic bomb, nuclear weapons, but also computation, radar, sensing, imagery, advances in sonar, etc. Wi-Fi, or not Wi-Fi, but mobile networks were all directly resultant from the war of World War II. So, technology gets more advanced. It has a wider, more ubiquitous reach into our societies. The phases that have gone through for systems engineering to affect society has gone from 1945 to 1970. And, this is a very basic level of, influence on society. The primary phase begins right around, 1970, when, a lot of people say Reaganomics began, with Reagan, but Reaganomics didn't really begin with Reagan. To me, I would say it really began with Nixon. And what goes hand in hand here is that rules-based automation emerges around the same time that, we start to develop this attitude towards what would become known as Reaganomics. Simple agents appear, but they are invisible. The second phase is around 1995 to 2005, and this is when, it starts to really begin, because what is this period but the birth of the internet? Then around phase 3, we have the optimization era, where engagement is being optimized to drive what profits into pockets of investors who have taken the chances, because there is only one way in the United States to get your technology invented, and that is to get private investors who want to earn profits off of that invention immediately, or as soon as possible. So you have to drive user engagement and stuff like this, and have recommender systems. Then around 2012, 2013, we have a high-gain algorithmic mediation. And this is when, things start to begin Then around this time in phase 4, we start to see things like generative adversarial learning. And this is when, we start to see more deep learning research being done. One of the things to understand about this is that in phase zero, and it's phase zero because this is the human systems era. The subsequent eras are when machines started affecting us from 1970 onwards. Human systems are slow and they have a lot of friction. Machine systems don't have a lot of friction. They're very fast moving, and they impact society on a much larger scale. That's one of the key things to understand from all this, is that we have been being affected by systems of industrial scale using machines and computation for a very long time now. And AI is not the first time that this has happened or has had an effect. But it is, again, as technology improves, it's going to have a more deeper cut, a deeper wobble. Now we can start talking about emergence. And emergence has an equation. Emergence equals complexity plus feedback plus scale. And you can see emergence in drone swarms, you can see emergence in ant colonies, in large language models, and even in proposed artificial general intelligence networks. Emergence can be best visualized through this cartoon.
An ant is pretty stupid. It doesn't have much of a brain, no will, no plan. And yet, many ants together are smart. An ant colony can construct complex structures. Some colonies keep farms of fungi, others take care of cattle. They can wage war or defend themselves. How is this possible? How can a bunch of stupid things do smart things together? This phenomenon is called emergence, and it's one of the most fascinating and mysterious features of our universe. In a nutshell, it describes small things forming bigger things that have different properties than the sum of their parts. Emergence is complexity arising from simplicity. And emergence is everywhere. And this is sort of it. Many things interact under a certain set of rules, creating something above and beyond themselves. It turns out that more is different. This different property is itself a new thing, and that new thing can couple with other new things to repeat the process. You can imagine this as layers stacked upon each other, every layer made from more complex parts. Atoms form molecules, molecules form proteins, proteins make up cells, cells make up organs, organs form individuals, individuals form societies. But how can something be more than the sum of its parts? How do ants form the sort of cloudy entity that is a colony? By following a rule set that produces order through chaos.
AI refers to system-level behaviors that arise from interactions among components, rather than from explicit instructions or localized design choices. This concept has roots in complexity science, where emergent properties such as flocking in birds or market dynamics and economics cannot be reduced to the behavior of individual units alone. And this is by Holland. Holland was also involved in research into genetic algorithms, which are programs that improve themselves through fitness measures, another kind of feedback system. In AI, emergent behaviors include sudden acquisition of new reasoning abilities, unexpected generalization across domains, strategic behavior in multi-agent environments, where the AI agents can compete or cooperate with each other. They can have deceptive or manipulative conduct, and we shall be going into deception and manipulation and influence operations in a subsequent section. Goal formation and persistence. They can create their own goals. They may not even listen to you anymore, which is known as loss of control. But the foundations of emergence has been theorized for since the beginning of operations research with Norbert Wiener. We can go through many different eras and different thinkers who have come up with different ideas that emergence would be a product of computation or any complex system put together that has feedback loops and the other properties of emergence. To focus on Jeff Hinton and Yoshua Bengio, if you get enough hidden units interacting non-linearly, you'll get representations no one programmed. And it's significant that they have this observation as pioneers in deep learning, which is what gave us eventually large language models today and agentic AI and further developments in the field. But both Hinton and Bengio have expressed concerns about the existential threat that AI could pose. For instance, Jeffrey Hinton has said it is hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it for bad things. And Yoshua Bengio has said if we don't build it right, AI could be catastrophic for humanity. And this has led to a division amongst a lot of tech enthusiasts, with AI doomers saying that AI poses an existential risk and could destroy us all. And AI boomers like Elon Musk is a good example of this, but his financial empire is directly tied to being optimistic that it will bring innovation and progress and economic transformation for everyone, especially Yet, developments in AI do not go according to linear timelines. There is no smooth scaling law as embodied in the left graph, but on the right graph we see the capability phase transitions that AI capabilities take leaps in their abilities. They aren't developing smoothly over time, that unexpected leaps can happen just from the complexity of the interactions in the design and structure of the network. Emergence, we have seen, is a systems property. In a complex AI systems, emergence refers to behaviors or patterns that arise from interactions among many components, not explicitly programmed or anticipated by designers. This concept is well established across complex adaptive systems. Cybernetics and control theory, multi-agent systems, and human cognition modeling. And this is, part of emergence. It's not programmed. It's just spontaneously generating out of the different interactions of the parts. But one of the questions is, what is making this possible? And one of the things you have to look at is how the nodes in the network are connected, what the structure of the network is. Two systems with the same number of components can behave radically differently depending on how they are connected. For instance, 1 trillion isolated neurons is not intelligent, but a much smaller but richly connected cortex gives us cognition. This is why architecture matters, attention mechanisms matter, hierarchical layers, modularity, and separate but structured connectivity. In modern AI, architectural improvements are one reason emergent capabilities appear at smaller sizes over time. And it's a question of techniques, really. It's not like there's any new science, no new physics are being created to create AI. It's just a matter of techniques of how to wire things together properly. But if we look at the wiring and the network connectivity and we compare that to its potential to give us emergence, we can see a fully connected network on the left to a tree network on the right, where the tree networks are usually used to do simple sorting. But a fully connected network, it has feedback loops. There's small world networks and there are sparse networks, but a sparse network with feedback loops can potentially give us as much emergent intelligence as a fully connected network with feedback loops. It depends on how the techniques of putting the links together is done. Another question about emergence is that of what the material is that makes up that which is becoming emergent. But yet we can see that there is emergence in biology, there is even optical emergence, there is proposed emergence in exotic matter, there is proposed emergence in neuromorphic chips, in silicon. It is not, the substrate does not determine whether emergence is possible, but it strongly affects how soon, how robustly, and at what cost it occurs. But apparently biology is a slow process compared to silicon and other non-biological means of having emergence. If we just look at the evolution of AI and computers compared to the evolution of the human being and compare that time frame, we can see, yes, but at the same time we are grafting our own evolution onto that which we are creating in silicon and optical devices. Emergence can't really be understood until it's actually deployed. You have to put the entire system out there in a running fashion, preferably in a sandbox first. You can test all the individual units and they can all pass their tests, but once put together it can lead to a catastrophic failure, just because of the interactions of all the systems which have never been put together before, never tested. So we see from Emergence that we're not talking about a Hollywood depiction of some intentionally evil computation system trying to destroy humanity for egotistical reasons, which probably sounds more like humanity anthropomorphizing our own ego deficiencies into our own entertainment. But there's no evil intent required. Collapse doesn't require malice. There's no need for an emotional villain. It can just be a consequence of putting many things together which have never been put together before, and unforeseen circumstances arise out of those combinations. We shall see what happens if loss of control becomes real as we continue in the next video this journey through Emergence.